Good morning. We are going to start section 7, which is talking about finding the part. I will explain what that means kind of in the next example. The next couple of chapters, or not chapters, the next couple of sections are going to go over something similar to this. So there's a formula that goes along with this lesson that we'll use in the next couple of lessons as well. So looking at this first example, and I know there's a lot on the screen, but it's the question and kind of the breakdown of it, so you guys can go back and look at it whenever you are going over your homework and questions like this. So it says about 88% of farms in the United States are family owned. Use the percent to estimate how many of 350 randomly selected U.S. farms are family owned. Okay, so down below it, it tells you what you guys are actually finding. So what the question is asking is finding 88% of the 350 farmers. So we're really finding the number of farmers that are family owned, or the number of farms that are family owned. So when you are doing this, and I have started, so you remember it, you cannot multiply a percent. Okay, you have to change it to a decimal. So that's kind of key number one. The other thing, looking at the top right over here, it says your formula. So the formula for finding part, which is what we're talking about today, and then we'll talk about finding the whole and then also finding percent. So this is the formula that we're going to use for the next couple of lessons. You're multiplying percent times the whole equals the part. And I know it says you're multiplying the percent, but you have to change that percent to a decimal before you multiply it. Okay, so first looking right here, and this is kind of the breakdown of the problem, I need to change 88% to a decimal. So this is what we've been working on. That's why we started with all the lessons that we've been doing. So it's just moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So remember, if I have 88%, it's kind of, I know there's not a decimal there to start with, but if it's a number, I can just assume that my decimal point is behind the last number. So it would be behind the second 8, so 8 decimal point. And then if I move it 2 places, I end up with 0.88. So then I can fill in, so I can then fill in kind of my formula. So the percent was 88, which is now changed to a decimal. The whole was 350. So that's the entire number that they randomly selected. So there are a total of 350 farmers, and they're trying to find out how many, specifically the 88% of the 350 are family owned. So what I'm trying to find is the part. Okay. The other way that you can, just for right now, eventually you'll have to know it, but for this lesson, all you guys are finding is the part. So you're gonna only fill in the percent and the whole, and the part will be your answer. So then you're multiplying these two things together. When you do that, you get 308, and that is your part. And just down here, another way for you to see it kind of in word form and understanding what you actually just found is that there are 308 of the 350 U.S. farmers that are family owned. Okay. Think about when you're doing this to kind of give you an idea if you are getting the correct answers. If I have 88%, that's really close to 100% or closer to 100%. So it would almost be the 350, and 308 is close to 350. If I were to say, 12% of farmers or 12% of farms and find 12% of 350, that answer shouldn't be really close to 300. So if you we're doing a problem like that and it's 12% of 350 and you get something like 308, your answer is probably off. So double check your multiplication. So same thing with this. If I have 88% of 350 and I only got maybe like 11 of the 350 farmers, or of the farms, then you're probably off. 12% of, or 88% of 350 is going to be a lot higher than 12. So look for those things when you're doing this. Make sure that you are using the cube strategy. I know it's been a while since we've talked about it, where you're circling keywords, you're underlining the question, you're boxing in the numbers that you're using, you're solving. So just think about those things when you're doing this. Make sure you're on the right track to the correct answer. Okay, so just going over a couple other examples, because there are a couple questions like this in your homework. So it's the same formula, and a lot of the questions that you guys are going to be given will not be word problems. They're just going to be, they'll look like this. They'll say 6% of 300 or 62.5% of 320, and you're just solving. So a lot of the times you're not going to have to pull them out of a word problem and figure out where they go. Remember, before all of this really happened, we started talking about what the word of meant in math. So remember, of means to multiply. So you can also think of it as 6% times 300, which is really the problem. So I have 6% of 300. Just to review really quickly, when you're changing something like this to a decimal, you're still moving 2 places, which means you may have to add a 0. So if I have 6%, my decimal is behind the 6. And if I move it 2 places to the left, I'm going to end up having to add a 0 before the 6 and then a decimal point, and then I can then multiply it together. Just a review of multiplying decimals. I know it's been a while since we've done that. So I would have 300 times 0.06. And then I'm just multiplying like normal. So 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 again is 0. 6 times 3 is 18. Then the second row, since I have zeros, I would just be getting zeros. Remember, when you are putting your decimal place, you are counting the number of places behind decimal point. So I have 2 places behind the decimal point in my problem, which means I need 2 numbers behind the decimal point in my answer. So it would go right there. So my part, or if you want to think of it in word form, 6% of 300 is equal to 18. Okay. On this side, this problem's already solved out, but if I have 62.5% of 320, I'm changing it to a decimal. I'm moving the decimal 2 places. So I have 0.625. So now you have 3 numbers behind the decimal point. You're multiplying this out. The answer would then be 200 when you multiply it out. But whenever you multiply it, you're going to have 3 numbers behind your decimal point. Since I have 3 numbers right here behind my decimal point in my problem. Okay. And going over one more question, and this is kind of an example of a word problem that you would see. And this one actually is not, your answer won't be math. It's kind of just in word form and explaining it. So it says, Travis surveys 34 people at school and finds no one has a blood type of AB negative. Do his results seem correct? Explain. So there's this chart right here, and it tells you the types or people's blood types, and then the population in percent form of how many people have that blood type. So you can see O positive and A positive have really high percents. So my question is asking about AB negative. So if you are looking down here, only 1% of the population has AB negative as a blood type. So the question is saying, do his results seem correct? So think about if you were to survey 34 people at your school and only nobody said that they had a blood type of AB negative, because only 1% of people in the United States have that blood type. So thinking about this, if only 1% has it, the chances of you running into somebody that has it is pretty low. So in this question, I would say something as far as explaining that his answer could be correct because the percentage of people that have AB negative is really low. So the chance of him running into somebody with AB negative is pretty low as well. So just explain it the best that you can on these questions. There won't be a whole lot of questions like this. It'll be more so just straightforward, finding 45% of 92 and multiplying it out. So that's what the majority of your homework is. Just think about the questions before you're doing them. Double check your multiplication. Make sure you're putting the decimal in the correct place. If you have to add a zero, add a zero. Don't just put a decimal and then leave a space and then the number. You have to fill in zeros where needed. Okay. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. I hope you have a great day. You only have 2 more days until spring break starts, so yay!